We're starting this episode with a big, deep breath. The week I am taping this, something big is happening. My daughter, my only child, is turning 18. In just a few short months, she'll be packing up her life and heading to college in another state. I always knew this day would come, but now that it's here, I'm feeling everything at once. Pride, excitement, and uncertainty. We've always been incredibly close, and the thought of not seeing her as much is a little overwhelming, not gonna lie. But allow me to get a little honest and reflective with you for a second. I realized something. Life has actually been quietly preparing me for this moment all along. 5 years ago, when I got divorced, I had to learn what it meant to share time. To go from being together every day to only half the time. And then as she grew into an independent young woman, I saw her less and less, especially after I moved a little further away a year ago. Her world started expanding beyond mine. And now, here we are. We're in the final stretch before this big transition. So today I want to talk a little bit about what happens when parenthood shifts, when the role you've poured your heart into for so many years suddenly changes, how we embrace the next chapter, not just for our kids, but for ourselves. How do we find joy, purpose, and even new dreams in this new stage of life? So today's conversation is a bit personal, and if you're on this journey too, or know you'll be here someday, I hope it resonates with you and we can figure this out together. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Life's Next Lesson Plan. I'm Rachel, and I started this podcast during my 29th and last year as a high school teacher. The goal of my work with Life's Next Lesson Plan, as well as my Live and Learn Patreon, is to create a connection where we are all teachers. We all have lessons and stories to share that can help others. I'm so fortunate to be able to extend the four walls of my previous classroom to an unlimited audience, where we can all learn from each other. And my guests are some of the most inspirational people with the best stories and lessons I know, which is why I want to share them with you. Their words are something everyone should hear. It is my hope that you are able to take away something from each episode to apply to your own life, whether that be a career search, path to a more fulfilling life, or new ideas on current topics. This episode of Life's Next Lesson Plan is sponsored by Literatus. Literatus is more than just a bookstore. It's a hub for connection, community, and incredible stories waiting to be discovered. Rather than sending my listeners to big online retailers, I want to encourage you to support this beloved local business. Whether you're picking up a book we've discussed on the podcast or browsing their website for your next literary adventure, Literatus has you covered. Every week on the podcast, we dive into books that inspire, challenge, and transform. And now I'm thrilled to share a way for you to get those books while supporting a local treasure. Literatus, right in my own town of Watertown. By shopping at Literatus, you're not just buying a book. You're investing in our community. And who doesn't love the smell of fresh pages while you sip one of their handcrafted drinks, enjoying the charm of your local bookstore visit? Stop in today at 401 Main Street in Watertown, or visit their social media or website to order online. Let's support the places that make our town special. Before we get too deep into today's episode, I just want to share a little announcement about a decision I've made regarding the podcast. Yes, I'm still loving it, and yes, I'm still going to continue, but I'm going to go back to the schedule that I started out with, where I have just one episode on Life's Next Lesson Plan per week, and then I'm going to be pouring in a little bit more energy into my Live and Learn Patreon. So my episodes will release each Monday, as they have been, and then I'll probably do a mixture of guest and solo episodes, as I always have, and I'm going to be concentrating a little bit more on my Patreon. So if you're interested in checking that out, I do have some paid episodes and I do have some free content there as well. You just go to patreon.com/liveandlearn. Patreon houses more personal episodes because they're behind a paywall, and I will just again be very transparent and honest in saying that I have held back a little bit while I'm still in the classroom and as I'm getting my toes dipped into the podcasting waters, but I am much more comfortable now and ready in my new chapter to sort of go all in on Patreon, and that's part of why I'm making this decision as well, because I still want to connect with all of my listeners here on the Life's Next Lesson Plan podcast. But I also have had just again some serendipitous things come up in my life that are giving me signs and nudges that I need to put some energy there as well. So if you're really enjoying some of the more personal content here, I would love to have you be part of my Patreon community, again at patreon.com/liveandlearn. And speaking of Patreon, I have another big announcement, but I'm going to save it until the end of the episode. So you can catch the second big announcement at the end of today's show. Today we're diving into how we can embrace the freedom and opportunities that come with an empty nest, from rediscovering your own personal joys to maybe pursuing new career paths and hobbies. Whether you're in this phase now or preparing for it soon, let's talk about making this transition one of growth, excitement, and purpose. So I think probably the best place to start is just my own personal journey. And I'll be careful not to get too personal because I want to protect my daughter and save some of that for Patreon. But I think it's gone kind of in stages where she will be the first to admit that she had a pretty idyllic childhood for the most part. And her parents had mostly, when she was younger, an equal role in her life. And then I think that definitely when we moved, when she was in second grade, that started to shift a little bit as her dad had more responsibilities, and we were kind of spending most of the time just the two of us together. And then as things got closer to the divorce in her middle school years, there was definitely a lot of turbulence at home. And when I left for the divorce 2 months before the world shut down for COVID, she wasn't really on speaking terms with her father. So, it was the two of us against the world, it kind of felt like. And so there was that. And then a lot of work went into rebuilding that relationship with her father. And I would say, thankfully for the both of them, they're at the height of their relationship now. And all of this is to say that, we all have our own journeys. And if I had to go through this transition to an empty nest and her leaving home 5 years ago, it would have been a very different and very difficult situation. So I'm such a firm believer in things happening the way they're supposed to, even if they're extremely difficult at the time. But it's typical that when I look back, it usually seems in the long run to be for the best. So long story short, I'm definitely more prepared now than at any point in our relationship for her to spread her wings and move on to her next chapter. I think because her father and I are both in new relationships, she has shared with me that she feels a little bit untethered and is having a hard time establishing either of our new places as her home. she really longs for kind of that feeling of home that she had growing up. And so she's ready to build her adult life and, move to a new city and sort of establish adulthood, I would think. And that was hard to hear. There's been a lot of pieces of this journey that have been hard to hear based on, decisions that were made. But I understand. And again, this might be good for her. As a child who always felt really attached to home and to her parents, this might be good timing for her too. And without getting, too deep into it, again, I'm trusting the process and accepting that there definitely will be ups and downs. But to me, I feel like we're as prepared as we could be. I don't know if we're ever fully prepared for life's big moments when you decide to have a child or buy a house or any big life transitions. I think there's always a little bit of uncertainty and trepidation. So that goes with the territory, but we can take steps to prepare for the transitions we know are ahead of us. And that's kind of what I want to focus on today. Probably any parent who has had teenagers know that kind of once they get their license at 16, and they have jobs and they have sports and they have clubs and they have friends, it's, they're home less and less. And maybe that's the universe's way as well as for, kind of getting us ready. But as we do look ahead at this new chapter, and I'm such a planner that obviously I've been thinking about this for a long time. And, will I be okay? And again, years ago, I probably wouldn't have, but I feel like because I've been sort of putting things in place and mentally preparing myself, I definitely feel ready and I see her less and less. And again, that's good and bad. But, I've been doing obviously a lot of things to sort of redefine my next chapter. I never would have thought that I would have been leaving teaching at the exact same time that she'd be transitioning to college. And really, the two are totally unrelated. It just happens to be when, my original plan a year ago was to stay for at least 4 more years while she was in college, because then I'd have that guaranteed salary. And, we all know how that goes, but I just couldn't. I was getting a really strong tug and a very strong feeling that this is when I needed to go, but neither one of them have anything to do with each other. And some people might say this is terrible timing to do that because you're already going through this other transition. And some people might say it's a great time to do that, because when you look at the next chapter, and again, for me, I only have one child, so she's out of the nest is empty. There are different things to think about as far as like unexpected joys of more time and space. And then there's also how do we fill in that time, especially if you're someone who has had your child at home with you 24/7, like I used to. But as life should have it, I went from 100% to 50%, or there was some gradual change to that, and then now even less than that. So, I have already, I think, found ways to fill that extra time. Over time, I've been doing that, so maybe it's less abrupt for me, and that's something that I would highly, highly recommend. I mean, I think I just had a conversation with a friend yesterday about how important it is to have your own identity. We were just talking about in a relationship or in a marriage that, a lot of times, you become the couple and your identity is wrapped up in that and your happiness is wrapped up in that other person. And it's so important to maintain your own identity. If your identity is wrapped up in being a mom or a parent, same thing, right? Like what happens when that part of your identity shifts? And I've had this conversation on this podcast with people who've retired about if your identity for 29 years has been a teacher, again, what happens when that shifts? And, I always remember Ann Cook and her story talking about same thing happened to her. She became an empty nester and, her teaching career was over and it was a difficult identity shift for her. So I always have thought of that story and have been, planning for it, I would say. So, I definitely have a lot of hobbies and things that I look forward to doing by myself. The other part of the conversation I had with my friend yesterday was, if something were to happen to your significant other, God forbid, how do you fill that time? And I had to do a lot of soul searching during COVID when, that I was isolated and there were only so many things you can do. And I've always enjoyed working out and running, but that's when I found Cycle Bar, which at that point in my life was super pivotal to me. I had kind of a community there. I ended up working there. I loved the workouts, still do. I don't go as much, but I still really love that. Found paddle boarding, found kayaking, more time outside. Now we're going to be spending more time camping and hiking. And again, some of these things I'm doing with a life partner, but a lot of that is things that I would do on my own. I mean, even in my previous marriage, I would go to the lake by myself. I would go for walks with the dogs by myself. I would go running by myself. So I think it's just really important to think about, like, how am I going to fill that time and what are the parts of my identity? Like, what is my identity as me, not related to a career, not related to a parenting role, not related to a relationship? I think that's really important. And then, all the plus sides of, both this happening at the same time as my career shifting and hopefully having a little bit more flexibility in my next role is like, all the things that I feel like I have been putting on hold, I'm going to little by little try to make an effort to do. So, similar to like having a coffee date yesterday with a friend and carving out time, to now I can travel not just 3 times a year, not just summer, winter break, and spring break, like all the most popular times to travel. And how will that look? And having more spontaneous plans and more flexibility. So really trying to look at the silver lining. And I definitely, if I'm being honest, there have been times where I have felt guilty, and I know, again, try to protect my daughter's story, but it's hard, I'm sure, to watch your parent move on without you and enjoy life. And that has been hard, I know for a fact. And there's this guilt that comes with like, am I allowed to enjoy this chapter of my life? And maybe, I'm so emotional. Maybe that's just harder for me, but I'd be curious for those of you who have been through this, how you feel about some of the things that I've talked about, establishing your own identity. Was this an easy transition for you? What did you do? What helped you adjust to the transition? I'd be curious. So we're going to take a little break here because I feel like I've been sort of rambling on, and then we'll be back in a little bit. 100% of men and women have hormones. And with the increased presence of processed foods and environmental toxins, it's more important than ever to make mindful choices in the products we use every day. That's why I trust Hue and Grace, high-performing, clean products designed to support hormone health while reducing exposure to harmful chemicals. Because this topic has been my primary focus since ending birth control in 2024 in an attempt to regulate my changing midlife hormones, after making healthy swaps in my diet, personal care products, and exercise routine, I've been able to lower my dose of anxiety medication I once relied very heavily on, and have restored balance to my nervous system and cleared up the brain fog I was experiencing in perimenopause. Hue and Grace has played a key role in this transformation, offering safe, effective, non-toxic solutions that support my wellness journey. If you listened to episode 16 with certified Mayo Clinic health and wellness coach Tracy Danielson Mitchell, you heard our talk about the importance of hormone health. To share with you everything I did throughout my journey to balance my hormones, I did a deep dive on my Live and Learn Patreon about all of the tests and supplements that I use in order to navigate this journey in my 50s. To find this episode, you can just visit patreon.com/liveandlearn. Some of my favorite products I use every day include Hue and Grace's Hydrate and Detox that contains powerful antioxidants, electrolytes, and prebiotic fiber. Their popular blue drink you see me drinking on Instagram is their Triple Boost Hormone Support Protein Powder with blue spirulina that I mix with their daily collagen supplement. I also keep my skin hydrated and smooth with their spray-on body oil. I love putting this on before going out, and it gives my aging skin a more dewy look. I've also switched out my hair care products to Hue and Grace's Your Best Hair Day line, with all natural ingredients that help nourish my hair and stretch out time between washes. If you're on this journey with me and are interested in exploring Hue and Grace's trusted non-toxic products, for 10% off and free shipping, you can use my discount link at hueandgrace.com/lessonplan and reach out anytime via email at nextlessonplan@gmail.com with questions. Live and learn with me as we focus on living fully and feeling our best. Visit hueandgrace.com/lessonplan to see how easy it is to start making some healthy swaps on your way to non-toxic living. To those of you who have followed me for a while, you know that I value mental and physical wellness. Personally, I've worked with a few different coaches over the years and even been one myself. If you are looking for education and support in your own wellness journey, I would love to invite you to the wellness community I am currently in that keeps me accountable daily with my nutrition and movement. If you are a Facebook user, you can search for our free group called Team MG. This group is led by my coach, Megan Grimaud, who is a certified trainer and nutrition coach. She offers lots of education and support for your wellness journey. If you want to get to know Coach Megan more, you can follow her on Instagram at all lowercase Megan, MEGAN _Grimaud, GRIMORD, or even listen to her on episode 10 of the podcast. She has also created a discount code for my listeners. Just go to her website, www.team-mg.com, and enter code LessonPlan10 to get $10 off any of her premium coaching packages for the first month. Coach Megan is a busy mom like me who works full-time, so I appreciate her practicality mixed with some tough love to keep me going. And that sound means we are ready for the Ask the Teacher Anything segment. And today's first question is, what's one dream goal you have for Life's Next Lesson Plan podcast that seems out of reach right now? Well, I think it's sort of twofold. One, it's really hard to spread the message of the podcast. And I guess that happens organically if you have good content, and it's hard for me to know if I have good content that's just based on feedback that I get, and then people sharing the podcast. So if I ever find that I feel like it's not growing, or maybe people aren't valuing the content, then that's a sign to me. But if it continues to grow and I get good feedback, that's a goal, is for it to reach more ears. And then, something that I've been working on is basically just trying to cover any costs of the podcast, which are pretty low. But I did just this first week have my first check for a sponsor, Literatus. And then yesterday when I was out with a friend at one of my favorite local health places, we've been in contact as well. And they said, oh yeah, we need to sit down and reconnect about a meeting. So, more show sponsors and I think discounts for my listeners of places that I frequent and products that I use. It would be nice to promote them and my favorite places, but also, cover the costs of the podcast. So those are kind of two things that I've been working on. But at the heart of all of that is really trying to think about content that is meaningful to people and, finding really inspiring guests. And then the second question is, it's a hard one. If you could go back 10 years, what advice would you give yourself? So 10 years ago, I was 41. I was still married unhappily, obviously, since I got a divorce. But so it's really hard since I'm someone who believes that everything kind of has to happen in order for you to get where you are now. And I'm so like definitely the happiest I've ever been in my life now, that it's like, if everything wouldn't have happened exactly the way it did, I wouldn't be where I am now. So it's really hard, but I think, and this is really an interesting byproduct of this podcast, is I have had people reach out to me who are struggling with some things in their personal lives and feel that, I would understand and not judge. And that's been such an amazing, unexpected result of this journey, because part of me wanted to just go into this next chapter and sort of fade into oblivion. Like, really, my plan was to probably not be on social media hardly at all and just sort of, I don't know, have more of a private life. And it's sort of become the opposite where, I'm all over social media promoting the podcast, and I'm podcasting bits of my life, or actually a lot of my life, on Patreon. But, we'll see how long I feel comfortable doing that. And, right now I'm really loving the organic results that are happening from it and getting good feedback, like I said in the previous question. So I just think I would tell myself to trust my gut. What you're feeling is not crazy. You might be being gaslit. Your feelings are valid, and protect your peace, maintain your identity, follow your joy, protect your daughter. All of the things I think that I did, a lot of us can probably relate to, like, I waited too long to do something. And I think the same thing with, making any difficult decision, to leave a marriage, to leave a career. Like, it's never easy, and it never feels like the right time. And it happened the way it did. But, always believe in your gut intuition. I think I would give that same advice to anybody else, including myself at that time. So as hard as these personal questions are, I really enjoy getting them. So you can always submit questions to me on social media, or there is a question box on my website at lifesnextlessonplan.com. So for today's lesson, I think it's maybe just more of a reflection of, what work have you done if you are going through this, or maybe, even if it's not an empty nest transition, if it's a career transition or just sort of a crossroads in a relationship, kind of what work have you done to maintain your individual identity, reassessing, like, is it time for a change in any aspect of my identity or my life? What are the things that bring me joy? What are my values? And as we talk about a lot on the podcast, am I living in alignment with my values? It is never, ever, ever too late to change or to start something new. And one of my favorite podcasters that I follow gave me a suggestion, or her listeners a suggestion, like, 2 years ago that I started doing is, following accounts of women, for me particularly, who are 10 to 20 years older than me, whose lives I would like to emulate, right? Like there's this amazing Train with Joan account on Instagram. I'm sure you've seen her if you're into fitness, but she's like in her 70s and she started, her fitness journey in her 60s, and she's just a beast. She's like a Lululemon ambassador. She's, probably outlifting me. So, that's, I think, really great, is like finding parts of your life that you feel, you don't want to miss out at the end of your life and say, I always wanted to do that, or I wish I would have done that, because you can. Like the time is now. And then just thinking about, any unexpected benefits of working more flexibility and time into your life, if this is a shift that you're going to, embark on in the near future. How are you going to spend that time, and how can we see that added flexibility and spontaneity as a gift? So, it's going to encounter, different daily habits possibly, and creating new routines. No more, driving a kid to sports. And again, that changes when they get their own license. And so I think that's like a shift that happens naturally. But looking at how you can maybe restructure some daily habits, how you can shift your mindset to see this opportunity as a positive and not a loss, although there will be days that you feel loss. And just like that's a whole other conversation of like, what is the routine going to be for, are we texting every day? Are we FaceTiming once a week? What is that going to look like? Which I just laugh because that looks so different than when I went to college and there weren't cell phones. And, I don't know if anybody knew if I was alive or dead at college most of the time, just so different. And then finding like-minded people in this stage of life who you can lean on and talk to, and putting together sort of that little community of support. And, obviously, the financial realizations that have to be considered for, budgeting for a career shift, budgeting for the financial burden of college. Obviously, that's a conversation that we had to have. Here's what you can expect from me. Here's what you can expect from dad. We had that conversation, and then here's what that looks like for you. And then, with my daughter turning 18, that's another conversation. I just had to fill out paperwork to, still have access to her medical charts. And, your debt in college is now your debt. And, that was a very big conversation when deciding on where to go for school. There's the pie in the sky. I want to go here, I want to go there. And then the reality of what the price tag of college looks like. And, if your child is choosing, or not choosing, but is going to have to pay for some of that expense on their own, that is a very deep and big conversation to have. So, I'm just going to stop rambling, I guess, again, and say like it's all personal to your own situation. But I hope that, some of my own story can help you in some way, shape, or form. But I'd also love to hear like advice that you have, and then something you're excited for or nervous about. And so please reach out, on social media to share your thoughts about this episode. As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to remind you this transition, whether you're facing it now or preparing for it in the future, is not just about letting go. It's about stepping forward. It's about trusting the foundation you've built, embracing the unknown, and giving yourself permission to grow alongside your child. Yes, there will be moments of sadness, of uncertainty, of wondering what comes next. but there will also be moments of joy, discovery, of newfound freedom to create that life that excites you. So if you're on this journey with me, I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you're looking forward to in your next chapter? Or if you've been through this transition already, help us! What helped you the most? You can connect with me on social media at Instagram or Facebook, or dive deeper into these conversations inside my Live and Learn Patreon. In fact, on Patreon, I'm going to have a special April Empty Nest collection. And so I have a few fun things planned, including my daughter has agreed to be on a podcast with me, even though she refuses to listen to my podcasts usually. And also our guest, Reagan Zimmerman Shrestha from episode 22, is going to be back in a Patreon episode where she talks about her tips for applying for college based on what she knows as an MIT interviewer. And also she's going to explain her process and tips for fleeing the nest. So I hope you join us in April. Again, you can become a subscriber for just $5 a month and get all of these exclusive episodes. We're also going to be including a packing list on there and answering more questions, or you can just purchase per episode or per collection by going to patreon.com/liveandlearn. As a quick reminder, starting next week, we're shifting to one episode a week, so each Monday, and I'll also have additional content on YouTube and my Live and Learn Patreon. Lots of exciting things ahead, and I can't wait to share them with you. Until next time, remember, this isn't the end of a chapter. It's the beginning of a new one. And like every lesson before, we'll figure it out as we go. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.